Hello, welcome to another video, and man, I was on a trip, and that trip happened to be Alan Wake 2. This is going to be kind of a different type of video than I ever really make. It's going to be purely just commentary, me talking about Alan Wake 2, mainly because I didn't record any of me playing it. I didn't do it at all for a video. I wasn't planning to make any videos on it. Personally, I'm glad that I did it that way, just for the fact that it feels like a game that would have been horrible to just try and make purely YouTube videos on, because it feels like barely any of it you'd have to cut. You'd have to cut just the chunks of gameplay, I guess. It would be a long time, because there's so many little tiny things in the story that will be tough to cut out. But this isn't going to have any wide-scale spoilers, I don't think. I think I might talk about the conclusion slightly, and I'll probably say the fact that I'm going to talk about the conclusion before I do, in case you haven't played Alan Wake 2, because this definitely feels like a game that you should go in blind. I went in very blind. For context, I never played the first Alan Wake game. I was just a little wee 12-year-old at the time that was a goober that only played Call of Duty. That would have been right around like the golden time of Call of Duty. That's the only thing I had time for, was this first-person shooter world. Alan Wake never crossed my mind. I think I heard about it years later that it was like this really good game that wasn't uber popular at the time, and I just never got around to play it. But before playing Alan Wake 2, I did go and like watch a retrospective of it and like learn what the story was and watch it, a summary of the story, essentially just to have an idea of what's going on. Alan Wake 2, you definitely don't have to play Alan Wake 1 to understand what's going on or to understand the story. Even just from watching the retrospectives, though, understanding some of the small little, Easter eggy kind of things that they throw in there from the first game is fun to see and kind of understand while it's happening. Overall, you definitely don't have to play Alan Wake 1 to, fully experience Alan Wake 2. It's its own story and everything. To get right to it, man, the beginning of this game, it hooks you like you're a goddamn big-ass sea bass and there's a nice fat worm on a hook. The beginning of this game leaves you sitting there questioning everything. I didn't play this in one sitting, obviously, and while playing through this game, boy, every time I turned the game off, I would literally go to work the next day and just sit there and be like, what's happening in the story? I'm trying to sit there and piece it together in my head of what's going on. And I think that's a big strength with Alan Wake 2, is like the beginning hooks you so well and the narrative builds and builds and builds really strongly. And it does leave these bit of breadcrumbs throughout it that you really do have to pay attention to a lot while playing the game. I missed stuff, obviously. I think everyone that plays this game is going to miss stuff. But I just, after finishing the game, I went and watched like a kind of analysis of the story kind of thing. Just purely for the fact of seeing things that I missed while playing the game. How the game works is they added a new character, or a few new characters to the game, completely not in the first game, Saga Anderson and her partner Alex Casey. How the game works is there's two different stories going on. There's Alan Wake's story, which is called Initiative. I think it's called that. I don't know if I can read or not. And Saga Anderson's, which is Return. And you can go back and forth. After a certain period of the game, you can then switch freely. I knew this going into the fact and thought, okay, I want to experience this the best way possible. So I looked up like how to complete each certain chapters, so you kind of can get the story more in a way, if that makes sense. I'm glad I did, because I could definitely see you playing through one full character story. Kind of when you get to the cutoff point where you have to, follow Remedy's story, at that point, you'd be sitting there with a lot of you'd have so many questions that you'd forget you had questions at the start of their story, and by the time they'd have some breadcrumb of an answer, I think you'd forget it at times. Or you might have eureka moments. I know I had so many eureka moments. There's so many fucking curveballs and twists that I really do think that you should go into this game blind. Simply for the fact that it feels so good and exciting when you do kind of get like the pieces that like, holy shit, this is why this happened and stuff like that. Overall, the story of the two really makes sense. Once it's over. And I think the addition of Saga Anderson and Alex Casey is really good. I know it's like a little weird, the fact that the game is called Alan Wake 2, and half the game you're playing as someone else. But it does seem to make sense as you're playing it. And personally, playing through the two stories, I enjoyed Saga's story more than Alan's at times. How I would describe the two is Alan's is like the more thinking, what the fuck's happening kind of story. Like, it creates so many more questions, while Saga's does create questions, but there is a lot more payoff and more answers that happen in Saga's story, which I preferred simply just because, I don't know, I have a simple brain, if that makes sense. I want some sort of answers. The overall story element, I'll talk about the conclusion, I think, at the end, but while playing through the story, the gameplay of this game, it added a few things with Alan. I don't think this is a spoiler or anything, but he's in the dark place in the game. You're going through the dark place. So he has a lamp that can switch how certain areas look by, adding light or taking light away from. Pretty, fine puzzle mechanic kind of thing. And he has the ability to rewrite specific scenes with evidence or storytelling cues or whatever word I can't think of that go with it, and it completely changes the environment to then progress through the story. I think it's not complicated in any way. If you simply just go through the set thing, it ends up working pretty well. I think it adds a good little bit of puzzle element to Alan's story, and it makes sense in the context of the overarching thing. And with Saga, her version of this because he has a writer's room mind space. She has a mind space to help herself solve cases, and this mind space or mind place, the reason of it and everything behind it kind of makes sense and is answered throughout the story, because Alan Wake's story is revolving and changing into this kind of horror story, and it is affecting her life, personal life, and everything like that. Because she has this mind place, it kind of negates her believing in this story. She can see through it and understand what is real and what isn't, while everyone around her slowly starts to believe this narrative that is being twisted into being the truth. And so that's the main gimmicky, I guess, story or gameplay change that they have added to this. I think it works really well, and they have done a perfect job, I think, in just making this purely a survival horror game. Just walking through the woods and such, you feel that environmental fear and horror that the game creates. It does it really well. I'll say I enjoy the fact that there isn't just hordes of enemies or Taken coming after you. They do it in a very smart way with just having a few, and I think that works way better with the gameplay part of this. Because at times, personally, the gameplay feels janky in ways. The combat can feel a little janky to me personally. I might just not have fully grasped how to do it well. But I don't think that's the main thing of this game. So I don't think I would be well, if you're going to have a bad time playing because of the gameplay, so just don't bother playing Alan Wake 2. I think that's nonsense. I think just understanding that the gameplay is not the purely reason to come and play this game. It's pretty safe, but makes sense in the story, too. And quick disclaimer, the graphics in this game and everything look amazing. If you are someone that hates the fact of, a game looks ugly, I won't play it, this game will not be a problem for you, because this game looks gorgeous. There's moments where the environment and the people just look so real, and Remedy including live action pieces into this game, I think they do it damn near perfectly. It doesn't feel like you're fully getting pulled out of the game, that you're not playing a video game anymore. It does a really good job adding this into a video game to add context and add narrative to the story without making you feel like you're not playing a video game anymore, if that makes sense. But overall, the gameplay can feel a little broken. I think I kind of screwed myself at a certain point, because for people that have played, I went through 2 of the main bosses with Saga without the sawed-off shotgun. I completely just didn't see it there. I don't know how I managed that, but completely just missed it. And Man, after getting it, it would have been so much nicer. It would have made the time so much better if I had it, but is what it is. I played through the game without it for, well, that portion of the game without it and was fine. The fights felt a little harder, but I got through them, believe it or not, somehow. Now, to talk about the conclusion, I think the biggest issue is, like, people that played Alan Wake 1, I think, feel like this more. Talking about the things, minor spoilers, if you haven't played the game, just, you know, be on alert, I guess. The conclusion feels abrupt, I'll say. While playing the game, the narrative is building so much, and it's getting, you know, a lot of traction, and then it just, when the twist happens and it hits you, it feels like, boom, game is basically over, which felt odd almost in a certain way. And then the ending of the game feels as if a lot less gameplay and a lot of just like narrative pieces, I guess. Like when the actual ending is happening, I got the achievement for completing the last chapter, and I was sitting there watching the cutscene like start, and I thought, how is this actually, like, what the fuck, this is the ending kind of feeling? And that happens, and I, you know, had more understanding of why. But I can see the people that have played the first one that waited, you know, 13 years for this game to feel a little unfulfilled with the ending, because, not to spoil anything, the ending really does feel like it just purely added so many more questions without almost any concrete answers, if that makes sense. And I know that in the New Game Plus that they recently added, I watched the alternate ending that they added. Sure, it might add a couple answers, but it still just feels very... It feels odd that they went about the ending this way with a giant cliffhanger type ending while they waited this long for this game. And I know they're going to build off of it with DLCs and probably into the new Control, get in the next Control. I'm sure they'll have some answers. Just, it feels like the story was working so good, you know, so strong. It was building so much momentum, and then the ending kind of just happened to this abrupt stop that felt odd in a way. So, I don't know. I'm sure Alan Wake 3, there's going to be wild, you know, conclusions to come. But overall, the narrative of this story, just because the ending felt abrupt and everything, I think it's still very much worth the play. I understand why this game was nominated for Game of the Year. I saw that and figured I should probably try it because I've heard so much good things from, like, just on the internet of Alan Wake in general. I'm very happy I went and tried this game. I think I really recommend going and at least trying it. It's a slower game, so if it's not for you, I understand it. And there is a lot of light pop in and stuff like that. So obviously, if you're sensitive to that, you know, go with caution. But overall, I definitely recommend Alan Wake 2. It's a fucking trip playing this game. Understand that. Understand while playing it, you have to pay attention to so much. And if you do, it feels so much more rewarding while you start to, like, get little pieces together. Like, you sit there like, damn, am I a genius because I'm figuring this out? But overall, once you get to the end, a lot of things start to make a lot of sense. But overall, that's going to do it for this video. I think I just wanted to come on here, talk about Alan Wake 2, because I just binged it throughout this past week. It took me about like 24 hours to finish, mainly because I actually like went and explored the areas when you were able to. Yeah, I definitely recommend Alan Wake 2. You're going to like just sit there and mess with your head trying to figure it out, but there's so many little tidbits in there. Definitely go and try it out. I fully recommend Alan Wake 2. I had a great time playing with it, even if the gameplay isn't the most crisp thing out there. But that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys on Monday. Peace out.